Opportunity for change presented itself at an all-minority USDA partners meeting on August 7, 2007. Secretary Mike Johans told the racial minority constituents that only by unifying the USDA's programs to be inclusive, not civil rights segregated meetings and delivery systems would they achieve fair and equitable access to quality USDA programs. The majority of the constituents agreed with the Secretary, except Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, Ms. Margot McKay. Civil rights' current approach keeps America as a divided nation. At the same meeting, Secretary Johans announced that he was amenable to reviewing and working with the research conducted by the Rocky Mountain Research Station and Texas A&M University. He was amenable for the USDA to work with the Texas A&M University system in implementing Project Texas Aggie Heroes as a national regional pilot to unify our nation's racial diversity and ensure that the USDA delivery system was fair and provided equitable accessibility to all Americans. Instead, the Office of Civil Rights continues on a path that divides our nation by race. Unfortunately, Secretary Johans resigned a month later. His successor, Secretary Ed Schaefer, and his leadership team did not honor Secretary Johans' commitments. For example, Dr. Bartuska and Dr. Foster eliminated programs and removed the Forest Service research scientist at the Rocky Mountain Research Station that could provide the needed expertise that Secretary Johans promised Mr. Salinas to finalize Congress's inquiry by bringing to fruition Project Texas Aggie Heroes. Mr. George Leonard, chairman of the National Association of Forest Service Employees, supports the Forest Service by claiming that the Forest Service lacks the $800 airfare to South Texas regardless of how good Project Texas Aggie Heroes may sound. This does not sound like a responsible response. Also, Mr. Leonard requested additional information to judge the merits of Project Texas Aggie Heroes. It is questionable if Mr. Leonard can adequately evaluate the merits of Project Texas Aggie Heroes. For example, Mr. Leonard never succeeded in diversifying the Forest Service when he was the agency's associate chief, nor has he succeeded in diversifying his Association of Forest Service retirees. The lack of integrity and accountability has created a cadre of irresponsible senior service executives and a covert USDA. For example, the Forest Service has created a partisanship with self-centered organizations, specifically the National Forest Foundation and the National Association of Forest Service Retirees. As already stated, the USDA Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights has already created its own partisanship, specifically the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and the Rural Coalition. Neither the Forest Service nor the Office of Civil Rights have demonstrated the leadership ability nor the desire to bring America, a culturally and racially diverse nation, together. As such, neither of the two can fulfill their assigned mission or serve all of America. I can only imagine that all of the USDA agencies have similar behaviors and attitude problems with our nation's diversity. Texas Aggie Heroes are determined to unify our nation. Unlike Dr. Bartuska, Dr. Cleaves, Mr. Parker, Ms. McKay, and the four organizations that I just mentioned, my generation is not blinded by race. We are more about building an effective 21st century racially diverse nation that can live together in harmony. All great civilizations were built on the shoulders of war veterans, and so was ours. The Civil War made way for the Merrill Act of 1862, which established a land-grant university like Texas A&M for the purpose of building a nation by developing and educating young talent in the sciences, math, engineering, leadership, and national security. For example, after World War II, the Texas A&M County Extension Service provided the young war veterans with technical training and the opportunity to earn a college degree. As a result, World War II veterans were equipped to build a strong nation. By the mid-1960s, our society became self-centered and paid little value to our form of democracy. Our Vietnam War veterans were rejected. Land-grant universities neglected their mission and failed to develop leaders that could lead and protect our form of government during times of war and peace. Societal core values deteriorated, so did our government. For this reason, Project Texas Aggie Heroes leans heavily on the Texas A&M Corps of Cadets and our Afghanistan and Iraq veterans to help us define 21st century leadership and integrative science and its application. As young Texans, we want to unify our nation. We reject the racial cynicism being promoted by Dr. Bartuska and her cohorts. We also reject the racial divisiveness and segregation promoted by Mr. Parker and Ms. McKay. We at Project Texas Aggie Heroes are standing on solid ground. we have the needed framework. More important, as young Americans, we are committed to do our part. Congress asked the USDA for a solution, and a solution has been identified. Secretary Johans committed the Forest Service to make Project Texas Aggie Heroes a reality. Also, Chancellor Michael McKinney committed the Texas A&M University system to work with Mr. Salinas and the USDA in making Project Texas Aggie Heroes a reality. Project Texas Aggie Heroes is credible and is not an overnight creation. Since its beginning, Mr. Salinas has been involved in President Lyndon Johnson's 1966 initiative to engage local leaders in promoting rural economic development. In October 1966, Mr. Salinas attended a town meeting held by two members of Congress from South Texas, who played an intricate part in establishing a 1966 White House initiative to improve Hispanic access to USDA programs. In October 1966, Secretary Orville Freeman wrote a letter to Chief of the Forest Service, Ed Cliff, directing him not to be so arrogant to think he was too big to be inclusive and to serve all Americans. The letter inspired Mr. Salinas to focus his career in bringing the sciences, humanities, environment, and critical thinking to public service. Not all Forest Service leaders are threatened by racial differences. Many have tried to strengthen our nation by embracing diversity. Prior to 2001, the Forest Service made sincere efforts to serve all Americans. For example, in 1974, Forest Service Chief John McGuire wrote, "A major detriment of how well American forestry prepares for the 21st century will be cooperation in resources management, with new and different arrangements of people, a trend which is becoming more evident with each passing year." Then, in a January 1993 speech to the agency's leadership team, Forest Service Regional Forester for the Southwestern region, Larry Henson stated, "No one is challenging our past. We are being questioned of our ability to be good stewards of our nation's natural resources and our nation's future if the entire leadership looks just like me, a white male." During a March 25, 1999 speech to the Forest Service National Leadership Team, Dr. Ron Stewart stated, "To achieve a sustainable future for America, we must first involve those representing the demographic shift as our partners." Yet, today's Forest Service senior executives and its close advocate groups remain predominantly white, while civil rights and its close advocate groups remain predominantly black. Nothing has changed, and my generation finds this unacceptable. We see today's generation of leaders dumping their rhetoric and cynicism on racial values and related problems on us. Project Texas Aggie Heroes also gained legitimacy by working with Texas A&M in meeting the mission of the Merrill Act of 1862. By working with Texas A&M for more than a decade, Project Texas Aggie Heroes' origins also lie within the Merrill Act of 1862. This means that Project Texas Aggie Heroes shares a responsibility to develop new talent that is technologically literate, economically sophisticated, and capable of leading a 21st century, multiculturally diverse nation. This new talent will come from all geographical regions of Texas, all income levels, and all ethnic groups. Another example of Project Texas Aggie Heroes' legitimacy is its relationship to Texas A&M's Vision 2020. In 1996, Texas A&M University was the only land-grant university dealing with the changing demographics and its impact on the management of natural resources and program delivery systems. In 1999, the changing demographics was mentioned in Imperative Number 6 and Number 12 of the Texas A&M Vision 2020. In 1999, Mr. Salinas met with Texas A&M President Dr. Ray Bowen and in 2003 with Texas A&M President Dr. Robert Gates to discuss Vision 2020 and Texas' changing demographics. The outcome of the discussions is Project Texas Aggie Heroes. With its insight to integrative science and its applications, Project Texas Aggie Heroes is an invaluable asset to the future success of Texas A&M, the state of Texas, the USDA, and our nation.